PMM aficionados. Welcome to a new episode of Effortless PM, your podcast adventure about project management and clinical research. In case of questions, requests, or comments, please contact me via contact@effortless.pm or check out my webpage, effortless.pm. And now enjoy the show. I am your host, Steven. Hey, welcome to the very first real episode of the podcast. And I'm very happy that you are listening. There was a delay in recording, obviously. I had a lengthy trip into the US for business reasons. After that, I got a cold and still struggle to get my voice back. So let's see how far we will make it today. As the first topic I would like to discuss and explore with you together is the risk management. As you know, most important part of all projects. But to start, let me briefly share with you a recent story of mine. So we use in our company a complex tracker for this risk management. This tracker is designed by the quality department, and the layout fits perfectly into the requirement if you come from quality, right? And with this tracker, we had a meeting with one of our client, and we discussed like, there is a risk, we may not be able to get all our sites activated as planned, so we in close contact with the sites already, but only make very small progress last month. And everybody agreed to that, and then we discussed the next action. Question: what is wrong? And from my point of view, there is something wrong on many levels. So first of all, the just explained situation is not a risk, it's an issue. If we have an issue, we need an action plan. I will come to that later on. But if it's not a risk, if it's an issue and not a risk, so why we're still discussing it here, right? The wrong place for this discussion. Second, the used tracker is not helpful in our discussion. It's not helpful with tracking the risk. It's not helpful discussing and assess the risk. And it's not helpful to discuss mitigations. At the moment, this whole process is so overcomplicated that everybody hates it. Nobody is really motivated to track risk and to discuss it. And that's a complete waste of time and energy of the team. That known, and also known that proper risk management is essential in clinical research, is part of the good clinical practice we have in place. I mean, remember with 5.0, it has a special dedicated part of sponsor responsibility in this guideline. It's just surprising to see how it's done at the moment. We moved away from a more or less simple process to an overcomplicated monster that has to be managed somehow. So how to do it? First of all, let me try to explain what is a risk. And if you Google or search into the internet, there are not so many different ideas about that, right? So it's mostly negative. It's mostly about an event that can happen in the future and that have an impact on your project. What I find, and I'm happy to quote it in here, is following, and I like that a lot. Risk is not something to be avoided at all costs, Rather, it's something we need to understand, analyze, and work with. Everything we do in medicine and life is based on some calculations of risk versus reward. And this quote is from Dr. Peter Attia. He wrote the book Out Life, the Science and Art of Longevity. And obviously it comes from a doctor, and obviously it's about medicine. But the core message is important. We always have risk around us in every situation of our life. And just trying to avoiding that at all costs will put us in a greater risk, in a worse situation. Okay, and as soon as you understand that, it's much easier to start with your very own risk analysis. So, okay, so where to start? First of all, again, what is a risk? Something can happen in the future, next week, next month, next year, 10 years, whenever. And this possible event will have an impact on you, on your life, on your project. And it will come with a probability. And it will have a level of visibility, which means it will be easier to detect if something is coming, or maybe not so easy. If this event with the impact is probably negative, you normally talk about a risk. If this event is positive, you normally talk about opportunity. Okay? So, and just to start with that is, okay, you have to identify this risk. First of all, so what can happen? My approach is always go with Murphy's Law, meaning what can go wrong in the very worst way. And then think about it, how likely is it that it will go in this way? And then how you would like to react on that. That's then called mitigation. And then, as I said, also how visible that will be. So how much time you will have to implement your mitigation actions you thought about that. And if you put that together, you have already your assessment, right? You have your risk assessment already in a very simple way. Speaking about this worst case scenario analysis, I always have 3 questions in mind to assess the impact. And that goes at the moment already as a kind of running gag in the company and with the teams. So first question, who will die? Or who is dead? Or who died? If the answer no is nobody, then okay, good. Next one. How much money we are going to lose, we lost, or I lost, I will lose, right? If that is also kind of manageable, then the third question is, okay, so do we jeopardize or will impact our reputation, our integrity? That can be for the company as well as for yourself as a private person. If that is also a no, then the impact will be not so harsh. Okay. So let me give you an example. As I told you, I went to US for my business trip. So potential risk, I forget my passport. That's something that could get wrong, right? So answer to the first three questions is no, no, no. So then what is the worst possible outcome in this case? Okay, the worst possible outcome would be I'm not able to board the plane and I may miss the meetings I have scheduled and I may cost some money to the company or myself if I miss this flight, right? What is then the probability that this scenario will happen? At the moment, it's low. I may say very low because I always have set a reminder and a checklist so that I always put out my passport and have it with me when I leave the house. So how likely is it that I see it coming, right? Please have in mind visibility, and can react before it hits me. It's very likely because I always check my pockets twice before I leave the house. So it's very, very visible. If I don't have it with me, I will not leave the house. Now, with that done, mitigation already set in place because I have a checklist, so done. Okay, now that's more for, let's say, mental support, so that avoid that everybody starts panicking. Is okay, what will be if that is really a kind of scenario that will happen? Okay, what will be the outcome for me at that moment, in a month, in a year, in 5 years? Okay, at the moment, I start, or I'm at the airport, I recognize or I detect that I forgot my passport. I have to go back home, I have to pick it up, I have to return to the airport, I have to take another flight on my cost, or I may have to cancel the trip. Okay, so that's the impact at the moment. In a month, 4 weeks, there's maybe a drop into my reputation, and maybe I have to cut off my own needs because I wasted some money. But that's it. What is the impact in a year? That is hard to say. Maybe a small impact in my annual assessment with the company, but that's potentially most unlikely. So what will be the impact of this risk in 5 years? In 5 years, nobody will talk about it. Nobody will even remember it. For me, it maybe will be a good story, but that's it. Okay. And that is already kind of complete risk assessment. In reality, unfortunately, most of the people overestimate the now impact and underestimate the later impact, which cause a lot of trouble and chaos. What you need to do is you have to prioritize also your risk. What does it mean? Prioritization is always impacted by importance and urgency. That means that risk with high scores are important, but maybe not so urgent. To document that or to have it somehow listed in your tracker, you need also a flag or a trigger that defines the probability on a timeline. What I mean is, and let me go back to the example with the passport, right? If a week before I'm aware about the risk, but I know it's 7 days until that potentially can happen, it doesn't make sense to panic 7 days before my flight. Okay. A day before, it would be good to check and start my checklist 5 minutes before I'm leaving my house. That is a perfect time point to check if you have your mitigation actions in place and if they work out. I hope that's clear, and I'm happy to discuss. So let me know what you think in the comments, or send me your questions. After we covered all that, that's one other point I would like to check with you guys, because it's very often missed in this whole risk management discussions, in the mitigation discussions, in the assessment discussions. And that is called risk response strategy. And it's not only the mitigation, but it's an understanding how you would like to manage the risk. And there are only few options you can choose. First one is you would like to avoid a risk. That means you are going to eliminate the threat or the impact. Second, reduce. You want to reduce the probability or the severity of the impact of the risk. Third one, you just accept the risk. So you know exactly what could happen. You know exactly more or less the probability, the impact, and you just accept that and say, I will deal with that if it happens. And the last one is you delegate the risk. Quoting Douglas Adams, problem of other people. You just delegate the risk to a different team, department, person, or whatever. Coming back to the example to forgetting passport for a trip, how to avoid. That's hard. I could say I will somehow duct tape the passport on my body to reduce it. That would mean I have a proper mitigation and plan that allows me to reduce the impact. Accept it. I don't care. I will deal with that if I'm on the airport and detect I forgot my passport. Or to delegate, which means I tell my wife it's your responsibility to pick up our passports. And that's it. And with that now sorted out, you can imagine how a potential risk management tracker should look like. First of all, you need the definition of a risk. Second, what is the probability that the risk can happen? Third, what is the impact or severity of the impact? Next one, what is the detectability? Of these three together, you need a kind of scoring that can be simple multiplication, that can be some weighting in, that you say, I would like to have double impact score and only a simple score for probability and detectability. Whatever you decide, up to you. The score will give you an idea about how important, and don't forget, it's not about urgency, how important the risk is. After that, you will think about the response. Remember, avoid, reduce, accept, or delegate. After that, put in some kind of flag or triggers that will indicate when on a timeline the risk could occur. Next one, who will be responsible to deal with the risk? Will it be yourself? Will it be a team member, a family member, whatever? And last but not least, what I will do to keep this risk under control. So this is the so-called mitigation plan. If you have that layout, you can start pulling down your risk, and then you just need to decide and discuss, okay, how often we would like to review the risk tracker and assess it again and make our updates. And don't forget, also the updates should be documented in the tracker. If you now work with this in clinical research, I heard already comments saying, hey, but you forgot completely the quality tolerance limits we have to implement here, and it's also required. Yes, I know. For you that you are not involved in clinical research, quality tolerance limits are special risk that could impact the patient safety or data quality, and they are normally defined from medical monitors, from statistician, and should come also from the clients. If there's interested, I'm happy to have a dedicated podcast only about quality tolerance limits, how you have to manage them, how they have to be documented in a special way, and so on and so on. Coming back to the risk management. To be very honest, we are doing that on an ongoing basis. And it's unconsciously done every day. For example, do I have enough food prepared for the party? What I will do if it's too less? What I will do if it's too much? Will I get a cold or a flu this season? What I will do if it's severe? How I can prep for that? Get a vaccination against that. That would be my advice here. Or just to come back to business, will I get my first patient in as planned? Will I get my last patient in as planned? Will I whatever do in time as planned? What are the potential risks about that? But please don't overcomplicate it. Keep it simple, because as more complexity you put in, as more they motivate everybody to keep it going and track everything. The whole idea behind everything of this is just be prepared and have a plan. And if you have doubts about your plan, have another plan. And that's it. That's all. Okay, that's for today. We hit the 20 minutes marks. Thank you so much for your attention, and we will hear soon. Thank you. Bye-bye.